Hello, everyone. Well, I really hope that you're being able to experience God's presence and peace with you in these continuing, challenging, and uncertain days. Today, I want us to spend some time thinking about mercy. Simple definition of mercy is that it is a compassion, but a compassion that acts on behalf of another who needs help or forgiveness. Jesus displayed mercy throughout his interactions on his time during his time on earth. And my favourite story of his mercy in action is the woman caught in adultery. The religious leaders bring this woman before Jesus. She's been caught in the act of adultery. Even today, catching someone in the act of adultery would be pretty scandalous. Back then, it was outrageous. And they bring the lady before Jesus and they ask him what is he going to do. Well, the law states that she can be stoned for her crime. Is Jesus going to show justice, display justice by calling for her to be stoned, or is he going to show mercy? If you know the story, Jesus, as the men stand around with stones in their hand ready to throw, he refuses to condemn her, and he rescues her and helps her. God is a merciful God, and it's displayed in Jesus. In Deuteronomy chapter 4, God's chosen people are on the edge of entering the promised land, finally having wandered the wilderness for 40 years. And they're gathered together, and God is speaking to them through Moses. And he talks in verses 20, from verse 25 of chapter 4 of Deuteronomy, he describes what's going to happen. He says, he talks about them turning to idols and turning away from God and leaving him and focusing on things that are not of him, and how that's going to cause damage to them. And then in verse 29 he says, but if from there you seek the Lord your God, you will find him if you seek him with all your heart and with all your soul. When you are in distress and all these things have happened to you, then in later days you will return to the Lord your God and obey him. For the Lord your God is a merciful God. He will not abandon or destroy you or forget the covenant with your ancestors, which he confirmed to them by oath. This is before any of these things have happened. But God describes what's going to happen. He knows that his people will reject him at times. He knows they'll turn from him and worship other gods. He knows all of this. And yet, even here, he's ready to be merciful. He says, when those things happen, I will be a merciful God. I will not abandon you. And God's mercy we see clearly in Jesus. Just going to use some thoughts from Charles Haddon, Spurgeon, on mercy, which is in one of his daily kind of readings. I've used some of his stuff and added to it. God's mercy is great mercy. There is nothing little in God. His mercy is like himself. It is infinite. You cannot measure it. His mercy is so great that it forgives great sins to great sinners after great lengths of time, and then gives great favours and great privileges and raises us up to great enjoyments in the great heaven of the great God. God's mercy is tender mercy, delivered gently and with great love, carefully removing sin and guilt and shame and regret, bringing instead forgiveness and healing and light and life. He is a God of wonderful mercy, and he is wonderfully merciful in the way he acts towards us. It is undeserved mercy, as all true mercy must be. There is already a name for deserved mercy. It's called justice. There was no right on our part to receive the kind consideration of the Most High. We deserve to be under God's judgment forever. Only God's sovereign love shown in Jesus can deliver us from that fate. And there was nothing in us that earned that. God's mercy is effective mercy. Some things are beautiful but make no difference to anything. God's mercy works. It redeems. It releases. It restores. It revives. It resurrects. In Spurgeon's own words, this mercy is a medicine to your drooping spirits, a golden ointment to your bleeding wounds, a heavenly bandage to your broken bones, a royal chariot for your weary feet, a bosom of love for your trembling heart. God's mercy is multiple mercy. Bunyan says all the flowers in God's garden are double. There is no single mercy. You may think you have just one mercy, but you will discover that it is a whole cluster of mercies. His mercies are new every morning, and we need them every day. It is abounding mercy. Millions have received it, yet it is never close to running out. It is as fresh, as full, and as free as ever. It is unfailing mercy. It will never leave us. It will be with us in temptation to keep us from giving into it. It will be with us in trouble to prevent us from sinking. It will be with us as we live and with us as we die, to be the joy of our soul for all eternity. I just want to use a story now found recently to reflect on the mercy of God seen in Jesus. Once upon a time, in a kingdom far away, there lived a great king. He was simultaneously the most powerful man in the kingdom, as well as the kindest and gentlest man in the whole realm. The kingdom was known for its peace, harmony, and goodwill. Neighbours cherished one another, and years would pass without a single crime being committed. One day, however, the chief servant of the merciful king came into the throne room with ill tidings. "There is a thief in the realm of your kingdom, sire," said the servant. The king was astonished. "Find that thief, and when you do bring him to me, he will be punished with 25 lashes. Those in the room were astonished. It had been so long since a crime had been committed. They could hardly imagine who could have done such a thing. As time went on, the servant came back into the throne room with another bad report. "Your Majesty, the thief has not been found. We have searched in vain for him, and your people are still being robbed." The king was enraged. "Find that wretched thief, and when you do, his punishment will be 50 lashes. Now the people were filled with dread. They were not even sure the king himself could withstand such a punishment. Who could be doing such a thing? Soon afterward, the servant again approached the king in his throne room. His face was pale, and his voice timid and hollow. "Your Highness," spoke the servant, "the thief has been found." "Bring him to me this instant," cried the king. The crowd that had poured into the throne room slowly parted, revealing the thief, who now stood trembling in the middle of the room. To the utter shock and dismay of all, it was the king's aged mother. There she stood, trembling and crying. Her small and frail body was shaking with fear and shame. She was perhaps the very last soul that anyone could have suspected of such a crime. And there stood the king, in shock and deeply wounded. The crowd began to wonder and murmur among themselves, "What will the merciful king do? Will he set aside the law and display his love and mercy by forgiving his mother for her crimes? Or will he display his sovereignty and justice by giving her exactly what she deserved? Will he choose mercy, or will he choose justice?" The king raised his hand to quiet the crowd. "Bring the whipping post," he said. The crowd was dumbfounded. Would the king truly have his mother receive such a punishment? Even the king could scarcely survive such a flogging. This frail woman would not last a few strokes. The old woman was tied to the post. Her garment was rent, exposing her back to the whipmaster. And just as the whipmaster waited for the instruction of the king, not a sound could be heard in the king's courtroom. Then the king rose from his throne. He slowly removed the crown from his head, laying it upon the regal seat. As he began to walk down the stairs towards his mother, he laid aside his royal robe and finely woven tunic. Coming to his mother, he wrapped his whole body around her, completely enveloping her under his frame. Then the king spoke, "Administer the lashes." Thus, in one act, did the king display pure mercy and perfect justice. God's mercy is costly mercy. Mercy is never free. Mercy is very expensive. Mercy requires paying the cost of justice. And that is the cost of Jesus' life. No sin has ever been swept under the carpet. Every one has been paid for. Jesus paid with his life so that we could receive mercy for free. Finish with Jesus' words in Luke chapter 6. To you who are listening, I say, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who ill-treat you. If someone slaps you on one cheek, turn to them the other also. If someone takes your coat, do not withhold your shirt from them. Give to everyone who asks you, and if anyone takes what belongs to you, do not demand it back. Do unto others as you would have them do to you. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who are good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do that. And if you lend to those from whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners, expecting to be repaid in full. But love your enemies, do good to them, and lend to them without expecting to get anything back. Then your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High, because he is kind to the ungrateful and wicked. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. Thank you for listening.